Hello, my name is Ari Galper, and I focus on trust-based selling. And on the podcast, I'll be sharing with you tremendous insights on how to let go of the sale, get to the truth. Ironically, that creates more trust, more sales, more opportunities, and how to break what I call the wall of distrust with people in your organization, with your customers, and to be able to help people have languaging that breaks that bridge with trust and to be more productive.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron, he's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives. Let me ask you, what do you need to do to up-level your leadership? At this time, many people are feeling pretty polarized, and as a result, often don't feel safe to tell their truth. Do you realize that as a leader, there is a specific way to language your conversations in order to build deep trust, that your people then can buy in to whatever it is that you're doing? Well, stay tuned, because that's exactly what we're going to examine on today's show. I'm your host, Dov Baron. I am the Dragonist, and I'm here to assist you tapping into the one thing in your business that changes everything by transforming meaning into action. To find out more, you can simply go to dovbaron.com. That's DOVBARON.com. This episode of Leadership and Loyalty is brought to you in part by our other podcast, which is Curiosity Bites. Curiosity Bites is the answer to the question, how can we bring people together who completely disagree? This is exactly what your mind, your heart, and your soul have been craving. It's your chance to sit in on some real and often rather intense conversations with some of the world's most exciting and interesting people, including astronauts, neuroscientists, philosophers, holy people, quantum physicists, skeptics, entrepreneurs, Grammy Award-winning entertainers, and some folks that you might completely disagree with, who you will find truly fascinating. Simply go to dovbaron.com and find out how you can sink your teeth into Curiosity Bites. Just get over there. As always, you can find us in these podcasts on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever it is that you tune into podcasts. And if you're a regular listener, a big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners, with a potential reach of 2.5 to 4 million listeners for every single show over time. And we're honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. As you've heard me say many times, leadership is influence and impact. However, let me put that to you in even simpler terms. As a leader, you are always selling people. You're selling them on your vision, on your ideas, on your outcomes, on your bottom line. And that's not going to happen without trust. In fact, anyone who's been in leadership more than about 10 minutes knows that they will fail miserably if they don't find a way to gain and keep the trust of those they lead. So what would it be worth to you to know the specific language and the language patterns to use in order to build deep trust, even in conflictual situations? Well, stay tuned, because that's exactly where we're going today. You see, my guest on this episode is Ari Galper. Ari Galper is the world's #1 authority on trust-based selling. He's been featured in CEO Magazine, SkyNews, Forbes, Inc. Magazine, and Australia Financial Review. His premise and approach are based on humanizing the sales communication process in such an elegant and natural way that the truth quickly emerges between the buyer and the seller, between the leader and those they lead. As a contrarian and lone voice in the sales industry, he says, we lose the sale or the buy-in, not because we haven't demonstrated enough value, but because we haven't created enough trust. His work includes private consulting with a broad spectrum of clients, including CEOs, entrepreneurs, business owners, advisors, sales teams, as well as young adults who have autism and Down syndrome. Yep. Helping them communicate more effectively using unique trust-based communication. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and help me welcome author of the best-selling book, Unlock the Sales Game, Mr. Ari Galper!
Thank you, Doug. I can see the virtual crowds already.
There you go, mate. Thank you for joining us, my friend. I really appreciate it. Coming to us all the way from Australia, mate.
Yeah, with the American.
You're in Sydney, right?
I sure am. Been here 20 years now.
Great city. Love Sid. So where we always like to start, Ari, is in this time where every man and his dog claims to be an influencer. One of the questions I like to ask my guests is, who is someone who has really had a lot of influence and impact on you that we might not think of, that we might not even recognize, someone we might not automatically come to mind, somebody who's really impacted you as a leader and how you lead?
I'd have to say Dr. Marvin Galper.
Dr. Marvin.
Who is my father.
Yes.
And he was a psychologist for many, many years. And he taught me growing up that it was important to communicate in a way with not just hearing people, but listening. Hearing, he told me, was passive, and listening was active. Active takes concentration on their issues and their needs. And he told me, when you're focused 100% and you're present with someone in their world, you can make that connection that no one else can make. And that has influenced me for a long, long time in my career.
That is, I mean obviously that is a very important message, but it's really cool that you grew up with that from your dad, because in a previous conversation, you had mentioned to me that your mom wasn't so good at that.
Everyone they were a bit different in the way they.
No, but that's for me. That's why I find that so interesting, right? Because you have these contrarian messages, or contradictory messages, rather.
Correct.
You know, with your mom, who, if I may say, was likely to speak over people, and your dad, who was committed to really listening. Is that true? Did I get it right? I don't want to besmirch your mom.
That's right. Yeah, she also provided different values, but you're right. It was similar to that, but he had a natural way about him, very calm, very relaxed, and he would always say to me, "Make sure that you are listening 100%, and don't have your mind on the next step or where you want to go next, because they can test that from you a mile away." And I got the exact same message from my son Toby, who has Down syndrome. I wrote a book about him. I mentioned that to you. Called Lessons from Toby, and he's taught me the way he is with people to be fully transparent, have no hidden agenda, and just be with somebody 100%. That same message has crossed me so many times, and that's the foundation of our whole approach.
Yeah, and I was going to say that is the foundation of everything you do. So, is it okay if we go a little bit into Toby?
Sure, that would be great.
Yeah. So, tell us how Toby. I mean, it's obvious, okay, your dad's a psychologist and he tells you, you got to listen. Great. All right. But Toby wouldn't be giving you the lesson. He would be I would guess he would be demonstrating the lesson.
Correct. So when he was 4 years old, he was at a birthday party, and I observed him with the other kids, how they appreciated him, how he would listen to them and he'd interact with them without dominating or stepping over them like the other kids were doing. And I was so taken by that moment is when I had the idea of writing the book about him, these different lessons I've gained from him over the years. And to this day, he's going to be 17 in December, and he's still the same gentleness and beautifulness about him without putting his own selfish needs over others. And boy, does the world need that right now in so many ways. And I really think that there's sort of this turning of the tide. People will be going back to the way it used to be, where people actually listened, connected, and built trust with people. And that's really what this is about.
That's so fabulous. I had a conversation, and I know based on what I mentioned in the intro, I had a conversation with somebody recently. I think you know that I study neurosciences, and we were having a conversation about evolutionary neurosciences. And we were talking about, I wonder, we don't know. I was talking with another neuroscientist about it. And I said, I wonder if um, autism and kids with Down syndrome and the way they are, if that is, we tend to look at that as being a retardation. But what if it's an evolution? What if it's actually the other way? And that we are, I know you can't use this word anymore, but that we are evolutionarily a little retarded in that we don't understand that level of focus and that need to, because we're very distracted. They're not. They can't. Autistic kids can't often handle too much stimulus. They want to pull it away and get really into one thing. And maybe that's our evolution. Maybe they're actually showing us. And I know you work with these kids. That's why I wanted to ask you about it. It was like when I first saw it, I went, "Oh, I gotta ask Ari about that."
Well, in many ways, they are the role model,
Yeah,
because I always say to myself, what if Toby ever goes into sales one day? He would knock it out of the park, because people couldn't help but to want to work with the guy, because he's not trying to take or move someone to his process. He wants to help them on their problem, and that in itself will build trust. So in many ways, they're a role model. They're a mascot. They're someone we should look at, to aspire to.
yeah. How wonderful is that? Toby for president.
Boy,
Nice.
what
What
a
do you
role
think?
model. Yeah.
I think we should get together and get this kid prepped because
Someone who
Toby for president,
someone who actually cares about other people. What a concept.
right? I mean, it's one of the questions I like to ask my guests because it's a leadership show. What do you see as the state of leadership today? And I'm talking about in sales and in business and in leadership and in corporate leadership and in politics. Like, what is the state? It's
It's, as you know, it's pretty crazy right now. But I think in general, people have a hard time just stepping forward, engaging, and being centered in themselves and telling the truth. I mean, my whole system and model around Unlock the Sales Game is the goal of this mindset shift that we teach is about getting to the truth of people, not playing game with them, trying to persuade them, trying to influence them, but get to what I call bottom of the iceberg, where you're
yeah,
at the point where they feel like they say to themselves, wow, he actually cares about me. I'm going to be authentic right now and tell him my truth. Now,
yeah.
it sounds a bit abstract, I know, but we have practicality around it. We can demonstrate today around this concept. But that's the philosophy.
But that is so vitally important. I mean, if we just look at it from a leadership position, if we look at the polls, and I always say, the reason that you don't want to listen to the polls, obviously it was demonstrated last time with Hillary and Trump, and the polls were in favor of Hillary, and Trump won. And the polls are saying, well, Joe Biden's ahead. And by the time this goes out, we'll know. But it's interesting to me, and I'll tell you why. Because people who vote for Donald Trump are a little less likely to tell the truth. Not because they're liars, and I'm not saying they're liars, but because they're likely to be judged about it. People who vote for Biden in certain parts of America will also not tell the truth because that area is more Trump. And so, again, it's not about whether it's Trump or Biden. It's about, as you said, this creating a place where it's safe to tell the truth and not feel like you're going to get ridiculed. I have Trump friends, I have Biden friends, I have people who are for neither. And, we have those discussions because it's about creating that space for truth. And what a great lesson you're offering to leaders, Ari, with this. Really. I mean, I think it's vitally important.
I think we have to go back to the foundations, to the basics of trust again, and understand what we got to do to reignite as a leader in our organizations, the feeling that your team, your people, your peers want to follow you because you're someone they can trust. You don't have to have the perfect vision of the future, but if you're someone they can stand behind and know that you've got their back and they can connect with you and communicate with you, you've won the game.
There's an interesting piece here because, we'll often say, I wish I could have been a fly on the wall during a particular conversation because we don't know the truth, right? We want to know the truth and we know we're not going to get the truth, and we wish you could be a fly on the wall so we could get the truth. And I believe that you had in a moment of being the fly on the wall in your own situation that allowed you to see what the truth was about the way you were communicating that became transformational in your own work. Could you share with us a little bit about that? Because I think that would really make this point very well.
Definitely. Oh, yeah. So about 20 years ago, I was a sales manager in a software company. We launched the first online website tracking software tools to track a website behavior. Now it's called Google Analytics. Now it's a free tool, but back then it used to cost money. And so I managed a team of 18 reps underneath me, salespeople, and I got the leads that came across my desk that were big opportunities. As one lead came across my desk, there was a large company, you recognize the name, they had multiple websites. And so I contacted the lead and we had a conversation, and he wanted to see a demo of what we do and have a conference call. I said, no problem at all. So we scheduled a conference call. And then I'll never forget, it was 4:00 on a Friday, and I went in the conference room with my CEO, closed door behind me. There's a long conference table in the middle of the room. In the middle of the table is a speakerphone, the ones with the 3 legs on it, the old corporate speakerphones. And so I hit the speakerphone dial tone, and up it came. I dialed the number, and my contact picks it up. I say hello. He says hello. Then he says to me, Ari, let us tell you who's with us in the room today. And I said, oh, sure. I didn't know anyone else would be there. Next thing I hear is, my name's Mike. I'm CEO. I'm like, oh, this is a good person to have in there. My name's Julie. I'm head of marketing. Oh, this is even better. My name's John. I'm head of IT. I mean, everybody on this call was basically a decision maker.
Right.
This is a call we hope to get as often as possible because they're all there.
Yeah.
So then I introduced myself to everyone, and they had them log in and started kind of do a webinar showing them our tool on one of our websites. We collected in advance their data to show them what it looked like, in real time. So I was showing this to them and walking them through it, and I started hearing this noise on the phone call, like, wow, this is great. This is amazing. They started asking me all kinds of questions. How does it work? How do we install it? Of course, I had all the right kind of answers. I knew this stuff pretty well. There was so much chemistry on this phone call, Dub. It was like a love fest on the phone.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah. We're
just
praying for those.
This is so good. And literally, they were asking me all kinds of questions, and I had all the answers. And it was just a fantastic call. And I was competent technically, answered objections, everything I was taught to do in sales. And they were happy. I was happy. An hour goes by. The call comes to a close. And my contact says to me, Ari, this is amazing. We love it. Give us a call a couple of weeks. Follow up with us, and we'll move this thing forward. I said to myself, oh, thank you, God. I was so excited, So I said my goodbyes. I took my arm, and I reached for the phone in the middle of the table. As I'm reaching for the off button on the phone, by complete accident, my thumb hit the mute button instead of the off button. They were right next to each other, like just design, and I hit the wrong button. A small click happened, and they thought I hung up the phone.
Mm-hmm.
In that split second, a voice inside of me said, Ari, go to the dark side. Be a fly on the wall. Go where no one's ever gone before. The whole Star Trek thing. Go where no one's gone before. And so I pulled
to the dark side, Ari. Come to the dark side.
Well, I pulled my thumb back for a couple seconds. They started talking amongst themselves, thinking I had left the call. It was all in a split second.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard some voices. And the next thing I heard shocked me, because I thought it would have to be fairly reasonably good things, given we had an amazing call together. You would think, right?
Yeah.
So here's what they said verbatim, word for word. What they said was this. They said, we're not going to go with him. Keep using him for more information. And make sure we shop someplace else cheaper. Knife and heart twist. I was in a state of shock. I sort of snapped out of it. I hit the off button, looked at the wall, and I said to myself, what did I do wrong? I was competent. I was honest. I was knowledgeable. And the first big epiphany hit me, and that was this: that somewhere along the way, it has become socially acceptable not to tell the truth to people who are selling something. It's okay to say things like, sounds good, send me information. Oh, we're definitely interested. Send me a proposal, without any intention of buying.
So let me just pause that, because that's really important. So, because I want you, the listener, the viewer, to just pause for a minute and think about, do you tell the truth on a sales call? Because the chances are you probably don't. I live in Western Canada. Us Canadians are famous for being courteous. So we might not say the truth, and we might put it down to courtesy or being nice or whatever it is. But essentially, the bottom line is you're lying. Now, the other side of that is to not be, if you're in the sales position, is to go, well, it's not my fault. They're a bunch of liars, and take no responsibility for it. So where'd you go from there? So now you're all like, these bunch of liars. They told me, but you did say, where did I go wrong? And you said you came to this realization it's okay to lie to salespeople. So obviously, salespeople don't have as much value as everybody else. Where did that go to?
Clearly, this is a dysfunctional relationship that's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I'm going with this. What I realized that is there is this invisible river of tension or pressure that flows underneath every conversation you have with someone in that process. And if you're the one offering something to somebody else, if you don't consciously remove that pressure and tension from the process, the other person will always feel comfortable not telling you the truth of where they stand. So that's why I came up with my whole mindset shift called the Unlock the Sales Game Mindset Shift, where the concept is you don't focus anymore on your end goal of where you want to take somebody. Instead, you focus on building enough trust with them to get to the truth, so you can then determine if you are both a fit or not. If you're not a fit, you disengage.
Right.
If you are a fit, you work together. That became our whole premise and philosophy we came up with 20 years ago.
So that's fascinating, because you brought this whole thing around pressure, and I said at the intro, and I truly believe it, that we're all in sales, but most people will say, "Oh, I'm no good at sales." They don't like doing sales. And I think it's because of exactly what you just said, is that we feel like we're supposed to pressure, and we don't like to do that. We think we're decent people. We don't want to do that. And we've also got the cheesy mustache salesman, plaid pants jacket guy in our mind about what's a cheese ball, right? So talk to us a little bit about this removing pressure, because by its nature, that says, by the nature of what we've conditioned, or if you take the pressure away, there's no sale.
That is what the old conditioning is over the years.
Yeah.
We're taught to believe if we don't move somebody forward towards the end goal, you're going to lose the sale.
Right.
What we have come up with is this concept that if you let go of your objective, let go of the sale, and just stay focused on their issues and problems, by default, you'll build trust with people, and they on their own will say to you, how about we move forward? You don't have to pull them forward, put pressure on them, or play the games we're used to doing. And I call it what I call sales armor. We put armor on around ourselves to protect ourselves from the bullets we know that are coming from our own behaviors. It's a subconscious thing. Once you let this whole thing go, you have the right languaging, you connect.
So how does this work in the context of a leader who is selling his team on a new strategy, or her team on how to implement something? Can you walk us through a little bit of a understanding of how to do that? Because we don't really understand it in sales yet. Obviously, we need you to guide that. But I want to put it into the context of leaders who face this every single day, selling an idea, selling a concept. maybe even selling the idea of a 20% pay cut due to the pandemic, or selling a 20% time cut, while still having to produce. So talk to us about selling that kind of thing that is definitely got resistance. It's not financial, or not, it is financial, but not directly financial, but still there's resistance there.
It starts with humility. It starts with the idea of caring about the other person you're about to communicate with, and thinking to yourself, what's the impact? If I deliver it in this way, in this direction, how will they be affected by this? How can I think about the way I communicate in a way that makes them feel better than the other way? How can I make them feel more as a human being in the process? Because even though the news isn't good, if I communicate in a way with certain languaging, tonality, and humbleness, the way in which I communicate will send a message that I actually am doing this because I care.
I don't think anybody would disagree that that's needed, but can you give us a specific example of how one might language that? I know that you've laid a lot of that out in the book, and I certainly encourage people to get the book, but I want people to get their teeth into it a little bit here and say, okay, you've got to bring your executive team, and you've got to mold that, and you've got to go, listen, we've all got to take a 15% pay cut for the next 6 months while we work out what the heck's going on in the world, in the pandemic, in whatever's going on. Can you walk us through a little bit of a demo on that?
What I would do then, if I was the CEO of the person having mandated to do that, I'd probably say to the team, we have a situation that's come up. Given all these factors, we have to figure out a way to reduce our overhead by 15%. So the backup option is for me to make it across the board, that decision to do that, and remove some overhead from our salaries, whatever it might be. But before I do any of that, I want to ask you and get your thoughts on how could we do this in a different way that is a win for everybody. What would all your ideas be for us to reduce their overhead by 15%? So what I've done there is I've let them know it's going to happen. If their input in itself does not make that answer happen.
Right. So I get that you've made them aware that it's going to happen, and I get that you've empowered them to be part of the decision. That's great, but understanding leadership as it is, and understanding the psychology of people who are in fear, they may have shut down due to the leadership style of the person in the past.
Yeah. So that now you're talking about changing the languaging and how you approach the situation. Right. So if there is a history there, that person has to make an adjustment. So I would probably say, in that setting, would you all be open to the idea of helping me out here with a problem that I have? And I want to see if we can work on this together. Now you're enrolling them together from the beginning, not saying this was going to happen.
Right.
And having it sort of a team decision, but ultimately they know what, if we can't figure it out, we'll have the ultimate decision at the end. So that's why you enroll people from the beginning. Would you be open to helping me out with this challenge I have?
And I love that from our previous conversation. Would you be open? I like that a lot. However, I'm still going to push back because I want to help people who are saying, yeah, but it's not going to work with my team. Because again, under an adrenal response of people being in fear for whatever their own reasons are, they're then saying, they say, yeah, of course we'd be open to it, but that doesn't mean they're open. Right? We all know that. And people say, yeah, I'd be open, but then we're okay, well, what's your suggestions? We don't know. Or, we don't feel safe to continue.
Well, then I'd put the responsibility on them and off of me. I'd say, you guys have to come up with a plan here for me to hit this goal. So it's your responsibility to come back with ways we can do this together. If we can't come up with some ideas, then I have to go to plan B, because that's what our goal is in 9 days from now. So you let me know what you come up with. Put the responsibility back on them. Let them figure it out.
Right.
If they can't figure it out, it's their responsibility.
Right.
So rather than preaching and saying, here's what's going to happen, you make them part of the process.
So you're constantly engaging, looking for input. So the next question would be, okay, well, do you put a timeline on that? Do you say, I need your input within 24 hours or 48 hours or whatever it is?
You can set structure up, but the
Sure.
underlying message here is you are validating their humanness as a person. You're not treating them like an object that can be thrown in and thrown out. You are acknowledging them as people, like you're a person. And when you acknowledge that with someone else by saying, here's my situation, can you help me out? Here's what we got to do. That makes them feel, even if the bad thing happens at the end, at least they're treated well.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to get to, is the underlying message that I respect and you're a human being too. Let's solve it together. If we can't, I'll have to go to plan B.
Yeah. And one of the things I like about it, when we talked earlier about pressure is, I've heard you describe it as the trust-based communication is kind of like a verbal aikido. Walk us through a little bit about understanding that, because I think that, again, there's a lot of conditioning around it. It is pressure. And if somebody comes at you hard, you got to come back hard, etc.
Sure. So I use the analogy of the martial art from Japan called Aikido. And if you're familiar with that martial art, the way it works is, well, like first karate is more of a linear art. If someone attacks you, you push back or you punch back. That's resistance against resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And Aikido, if someone comes at you, you don't resist their pressure. You kind of divert it and you diffuse it. So at the end, no one gets hurt. That's the concept behind it. So I've taken that same philosophy and put it into our trust-based communication system and model, where if you get resistance coming your way from somebody, rather than trying to overcome it, like an objection, for instance, sales. If someone says to you, your price is too high, for instance, the normal response, and anyone who's been taught in sales to do, is to defend that.
Of course.
Say, well, we're not the cheapest, or what, it's defending yourself is the model. So our model is, when you have resistance coming your way, you don't defend, you diffuse, and you re-engage again to build that trust. So here's this, in our concept, someone says your price is too high. What we say is, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. And here's the operative word. It can be perceived as high if you haven't had a chance to actually use the software to get the result that you want. No doubt about that. You're absolutely right. So
you validate their position, right?
It's true. It's a true statement. It is perceived as high until you have a chance to use it, get the result. What they're saying is true from their perspective. I just went to the truth of that and said, you're right.
Right.
It can seem that way if you haven't got the result yet. Absolutely true about that. And most of our clients exactly have the same experience until they actually give it a try. What I recommend is that and you keep going, you see? So I just diffuse and re-engage again and preserve the relationship there without breaking trust.
Yeah. So one of the things that everybody needs to really, truly understand about human beings is that we are all very protective of our egos. And the way you know where your ego is involved is if you say, I'm right, you're wrong. But you're right there. That's an ego statement. So by making someone else right, you have diffused your own ego. You have pushed your ego out of the way, and the other person, therefore, is no longer needs to be in defense. Now, of course, I think there's, because you mentioned this earlier, I think it's a key point. Tonality is key here. Because if you go, well, you're right, that's very different than you're absolutely right. It could be perceived that way for sure, unless you've had an experience. And that difference between the passive aggressive, you're right, versus an assertive, you're absolutely right, is a vast difference. And I don't know that people, I do know. I know that for sure that most people are not aware of their own tonality. How do you get that across? Because it's one thing to train people to have a language pattern. It's another thing to train them to actually create a hearing aid that they can hear themselves, because they're usually pretty deaf.
This comes to the idea of letting go of your agenda and being relaxed and calm and lowering your voice and being centered. What we have found is human beings will engage with you when you're not projecting pressure on people through your tonality and your voice. I'll give you an example. In a sales situation, let's say you have a first call with somebody over the phone. Could be a new client of yours, good opportunity, and the call is going well. And could be a good client for you, and the call kind of comes to a close. Normally, in typical sales, we'd say, well, hey, how about we get together, have a cup of coffee, let's move things forward. If you try and do that with someone, and they aren't ready to move forward yet, you break trust with them. So same scenario, our languaging and our delivery. Good call, going great, about to come to an end. Rather than saying, hey, how about we move forward, what we say instead is this. We say, where do you think we should go from here? And I'll say it again. Where do you think we should go from here? Now, that tonality and that delivery gives them permission now to step forward and tell the truth about themselves, because they always do. They go, well, I've got one more question. But if I say, hey, where do you think we should go from here? The wall goes up, they shut down, and now you're in trouble. So you have to be aware of how you're being perceived with your command of your dominance and your tonality in your voice, because if it's received too strongly with somebody you don't know very well or trust you very well, you've lost them at hello.
So that's a very important thing, because even the language pattern, where do you think we should go from here, is a great languaging, but again, so easily to lose it in the tonality, particularly if you're an alpha. I'm an alpha for sure. And it's easy, I take command of a situation, not because I'm trying to dominate, but because I'm actually committed to serving. And sometimes people need a kick in the ass. I get that. But there's a better way to get them, and that is for them to volunteer into something. And so your tonality around the pacing being slow and even a kinesthetic tone to it, and by the way, if you don't know what I mean by that, what that means is to elongate vowels. A kinesthetic tone, any word that has a vowel in it, just add the same vowel twice, right? So, for instance, love is not love, it's love. It's got more O's, as an example. So where is it think or feel?
Think.
Where do you think
we
should go from here?
Right. See, that makes me now want to step in to you and say, well, and out comes the truth. And that's how the truth comes out, when you are able to give enough space to allow the other person to step into that bubble of safety and feel comfortable telling you their truth.
So let's go to that piece, because I think that's the important piece. As I said in the opening, people are feeling less safe to tell their truth than ever before. It's political. And when I say political, I'm not just talking about Democrats and Republicans. I mean, it's political inside of the office or inside of the hierarchy structure. It's political as in, I don't want to say the wrong thing to piss off this boss, this manager, or this potential good employee. That safety piece, do you put that all on you? Because oftentimes people are feeling unsafe, even with somebody who is, you're very good at making people feel safe, and they're just that person who doesn't really trust anybody or doesn't appear to trust anybody.
Well, there's certain communication you do when it's broadcasting to the public. We have to be appropriate about that. Obviously, there's certain appropriateness, and there's also one-on-one conversation with people at a personal level. And this is very much about the one-on-one conversation with somebody. And how to have them trust you, drop their guard, and feel comfortable the way you communicate with them. Send them the message. I want to hear you. I care about you. And I want to do this the right way. And they have to feel that from you in your tonality, in your delivery, if you're harsh, aggressive, and sharp with your languaging, you've lost them at hello.
Mm-hmm.
The walls, the guards are already up, and it's going to be a fight and tension. And your goal is to remove the pressure all the time and be aware of when you're the one triggering it. I'll take you an example. We discovered in our research that rejection is something that's triggered. It doesn't just appear in the sales process. It actually is triggered by the tonality, the languaging, the words that. I'll give you an example. I always tell my clients to remove one key phrase forever out of the vocabulary and never ever use it again in their business life or sales life. And that's the phrase follow up. Follow up. Never ever use the word follow up ever in an environment where you're trying to sell something. Because when you call someone on the phone and say to them, "Hi, I'm giving you a call to follow up," what are they thinking in the back of their minds?
You're after a sale, mate.
They're trying to move things forward, which is their goal.
Right.
And people always use it every day. They write emails, "Hi, I'm ready to follow up on our meeting last week."
Up. Yeah.
And that sends the message, I'm just trying to sell you something. That one phrase alone can kill the entire relationship unknowingly. So
and every sales trainer has been trained to say follow up and to do follow up, and you'll get slapped if you don't follow up.
Which is a mistake. Oops.
Yeah, I guess. So what do we do instead? Let's put that in real terms. Okay, so I can't say, "Hey, Bob, I'm following up." Hey, I can't write, "I'm following up." I can't language. So what do I do?
Okay. What you say instead is this. You say, this is part of our trust-based languaging model. What you say is this: I'm giving you a call to see if you have any feedback. Any feedback on our previous conversation. Any feedback on our previous meeting. Any feedback on our proposal. Feedback takes you backwards, not forwards. See, when you try to move somebody forward, that creates momentum. Momentum creates pressure. And now you're under the gun. We discovered if your languaging takes the momentum out of the conversation, they step into that bubble and they tell you the truth. And let me tell you, when you say to somebody, try this, "I'm giving you a ring to see if you have any feedback on our previous meeting we had." Watch what happens. They'll start talking and talking and talking. And you're like, oh my God, he was right. That one language pattern shift opened the whole thing up.
So saying following up, forward languaging, which
Momentum.
again is very much what we're trained into in sales, is creating a pressure. That pressure is creating resistance inside of the person, even if they're not aware of it psychologically. Yeah. And so removing that by saying you're looking for feedback, which is it's a passive. I'm going in the other direction. It's totally on you. Do as you like. Will actually make them step into the gap and reveal to you whatever it is.
Because feedback says, I'm not after the sale. I just want to hear your truth. You're basically saying, I am equally weighting a yes or a no. It's not just a yes. See, we're so conditioned to get the yes that we're in a narrow channel. Our languaging, our tonality, it's all so well known. But if you can equally weight a yes or no, say, I'm okay either way. I would love to hear your feedback on your thoughts so far. Out comes things you never even thought possible to hear with someone, like the budget, the truth, their whatever. It's just fascinating to reveal that.
Give us, you probably walked through this a million times, and you've probably got some pretty funny stories around it that are maybe even polarized from how somebody you've worked with who's done it this way before and then suddenly shifted to using your feedback and where do you think we should go from here? Can you give us an example of that? Because I really want people to sort of really grasp the nitty gritty, because it's actually, a lot of what you do is very simple, but not necessarily easy. Edgar Casey once said, simple and easy are vastly different things, but we confuse them.
It takes a mindset shift.
Yeah.
It takes letting go of your own construct. of what you believe you've been doing is supposed to be right.
Mm.
Richard Branson told us that when he was in Sydney a few years ago. Said the same thing. If you let go of your framework you're holding on to from the past, then you can evolve. You will become more successful that way. It's the same concept here. Anything you say or do that connects you to the stereotype of selling shuts someone down. So we have thousands of case studies and stories you can imagine over 2 decades now. But the whole what you hear a lot of people telling me is Ari, I tried that one phrase. I said to the customer, not would you be interested in this? I said, would you be open to considering this? That one phrase, word open, replaces the word interested, you see? Because open doesn't force them into a yes or a no. It opens to a new space where they can tell you the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And this happens so fast. If you try this tomorrow and watch the reaction, the immediate pleasure of feeling, wow, you're getting communication back, is what changes the behavior and the momentum to try and get better at this over time. But I'll tell you a crazy story that really busted through some paradigms that happened to me last year. I think you might enjoy. I had this corporate opportunity that came my way, a large organization here in Australia, and a big sales team. And I did a talk for them, a corporate talk for them, and they were interested in hiring me as a consultant there, as an advisor to change their culture, whatever, around the sales performance. And so they called me in for a meeting to discuss the next steps. And I gave them the price. It was a very high retainer on a monthly basis. So I went in the conference room with the head of sales and the CEO at the end of the table, the head of sales in front of me. Nice guys. And
so it wasn't on a conference call. There was no button.
No, it was actually live. It was live in the room.
There was no button.
There's no escaping now.
Right.
Remind me, ask me what would I do if I knew what I knew now 20 years ago. That story.
I'm sure, yeah.
But anyway, so he says to me, Ari, we like your work, but your fee is pretty hefty. We need to justify this. We need to go to the board. We've never ever paid a consultant this kind of money ever before, and we need a proposal that lays out the value, the delivery. We need a whole written proposal to go to the board to justify your fee. That's what he says to me.
Mm-hmm.
I said to him, I don't do proposals. I don't know how to do proposals, and I'm not in the proposal business. I'm in this fixing your sales problem business. He goes, what? I said, doing that kind of activity is a waste of all of our time, because what you're losing 100% more than you'd be paying me to solve this problem here. He goes, well, what's the deliverables we get from you if we hire you for at least the first 90 days? What do we get back from you? I said, there's no deliverables. Because you have to first put your strategy first, to plan out first, to have a baseline of know what to actually create first. And then he says to me, well, how much of your time do we get? I mean, that's a lot of money. I mean, how much of your time do we get? I said, not a lot. Because it's not about time. It's about focus. And he says to me, but we're doing pretty well. We're $80 million a year. Our sales are up. We're hitting our numbers. Why should we even consider this? I said, it's not about how much you're making. It's about how much you're losing. 80%, which your people are chasing every single day, following up with people, never getting calls back. It's the money you're leaving on the table that's the dominant element here. So finally, the CEO gets up, and he was listening the whole time. He's kind of smiling. He gets up and he says, enough of the games already. Just invoice us. Let's get started.
Love it.
Because I busted through the game. You see, they were playing a game with me, treating me like a vendor, and I got the truth of them. So I was fine either way, but I'm not going to enter a relationship with them playing that game.
And I think that when we get into the scarcity mindset, so much of that is what happens is that people, they do move to that, oh, well, let me justify and I'll send you a proposal and all the rest of it. And I'm often asked that. Can you send us a proposal and outline the value? And I'm like, no. And they go, why? It's not what I do. This is what I do. Here's what it is. If it's a fit for you, that's fabulous. If it's not, that's actually okay, and I'm good with that. I'm here to be of service to you. And well, can you? No. And then they say, well, again, is it time? And I'll say, listen, let me explain something to you. If you haven't, and I'll say this particularly recently, let me explain this to you in case you haven't learned it. You used to have people come in the office and be there 8 till 5. What we know is that about 75% of that time, they weren't doing much work. And now you're actually ridiculously worried about whether they're performing at home. Listen, if they're working at home 30%, you've got an uptick in production. It isn't about time. It's about results. I can guarantee you the results if you apply what I do. Can't guarantee them if you don't, but if you apply them, I can. But I can spend 100 hours if you like. I'll just bill you higher per hour. I can do that, but that would be just me sticking my finger up my nose and not really doing anything. Or we could spend several hours really getting into it, as you said, focus. And I think that so much of our mentality is industrial age thinking. It's by the hour, and it's all those old thinkings rather than by the result. And I love that you're breaking through this mindset, this real rigidity around what does it mean. And you are really translating this, and you're doing this with big companies. You're doing it with entrepreneurs. You're doing it with a lot of these guys. Do you find there's a lot of that old industrial mechanism resistance initially for you?
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's so ubiquitous, and we've been taught a certain way to be with people, and the world has changed. And I believe trust is a new currency.
Yes.
If you do not tap into this constantly creating trust with your team, your people, your customers, your salespeople, everyone in your organization, you are not going to make it. Because in this way the world's going right now, the ones who they trust are the ones they'll spend money with. And if you're not implementing trust constantly inside your whole process in your operation, no matter how efficient you are, you won't make it ultimately long term.
And one of the things about your process is it's about being a problem solver. Can you walk us through that? Because I think that we've all been trained in that in sales, that I'm going to solve your problem, but a lot of the time I think that particularly salespeople are trying to define the problem rather than find the problem. Can you walk us through what you see as?
So what usually happens is they move into what I call free consulting mode.
Pre-consulting mode?
Free consulting.
Oh, free. Yes. Yeah.
Where they just want to give away and share ideas and testimonials and solutions, and they're waiting for someone to say, "Hey, how can you help me?" And out it pours out, "Boy, have we got a solution for you." And so that comes from the notion that we've been taught to believe over the years that our job is to show value pre-sale. And my shift on that is that your goal is not to provide value at all pre-sale. Your goal is to provide clarity on their problem, not value of the solution. To build that trust on board. That's a major shift in thinking, because most people who are out there are trying to promote, give away information, share ideas, give content away. The world doesn't need more content right now. It's got plenty of it 24/7. But if you can clarify with them their issue at such a deep level that they themselves couldn't understand it themselves, that creates a moment of, he gets me. He actually understands me. And that triggers the whole trust building process from there.
So that's a very important piece, because anybody who is even in semi-modern sales would say, yes, it's about showing, you gotta make them see the value in advance. And we didn't even, back in the old days, that wasn't even considered. Now it's like, oh yeah, you've got to show value in advance. And there was a book called The Free Economy, and there was, Give It Away. All those things were about that. We've all done it. I've done it. You've given away everything. I mean, there was a time when you sold an ebook for $17 and you gave $2,000 worth of bonuses. And I was always thought that was insane because like, I got all this crap on my desktop now. I don't know what to do with. There's I just love that you're bringing it down to this clarity of the problem. Can you walk, I know we're getting towards the end of the show, but I want to have people grasp, how do we get people to do that? Because one of the things, Ari, that I know you must be confronted with, I know I am all the time, is people don't know their problem. They have a sense of their problem. They go, well, we're not making enough sales, or we're not making enough profit, or I don't really know how to get my people to be more engaged. They don't, but it's all this ethereal, vague crap. How do you? That's a subtlety, by the way, for anybody who's not clear. How do you help them to get that clarity of the problem?
So, just one comment is that I believe value has become commoditized.
Absolutely.
Clarity hasn't. Clarity is how you distinguish and differentiate your company, your business. Clarity around their issues that you solve. And the way you do that, and funny thing is I'm doing a course right now to my clients called the One Call Sale, which covers this, which is how to make a sale in one conversation with someone when you're scheduled, without pressure, without closing, without chasing. And one of the mod sessions is all about this. It's called going under the iceberg with people. Because you're right, at the surface level of the iceberg, they'll tell you what their problem is, that they think it is. They'll say, we have a problem with getting more sales. So your job is to basically unpack what they just told you and go through a series of questions to really go beneath the surface to help amplify the problem and clarity for the problem for them to see what the true impact is. So for instance, here's a series of questions that I've been teaching, which might help your listeners as well. Mm-hmm. You know, if they say to you, we're having trouble with their sales, whatever growth, the next thing you say is this. You say, can you tell me a little bit more about that? Down the iceberg. Now they start to open up into you and say, well, our team's not performing, we got enough leads coming in. And you would say, well, how long has that been a problem for? The last 6 months. And what's the impact? How much have you lost because of it? What's the impact of not solving that problem? Have you been? No, we don't know. Well, what would you guess on a monthly basis would be losing if you can't convert the rest of your sales coming through? Well, I guess 50,000 a month. Wow. Okay. Well, let me ask you a question. Is that a priority for you to solve, or is that something you're happy to kind of solve in the future or live with for a while? Or is that something you want to sort of address right away? What's your thinking on that? See, I'm going down the iceberg now. I've got the ROI, I've got the losses, now I'm asking the key question, is it a priority for you to solve that problem? And he goes,
I get that, but I don't get that, and I get that that's getting them to the whether they want to buy, whether they see this as something that needs to be solved now. Yes, but I don't know that that's getting them to the clarity of their own vagueness, because I think that people, it's not the truth, I think that people have to get to that point where they go, oh yeah, that's the problem, I get it, right?
Well,
you get me.
Yeah, I did a quick summary, but I would ask more questions, obviously, in our time.
Of course, I understand that.
Questions like, how many leads are coming in per month? How many you're losing? What's the cost of the value of the lead? I would go detail into it, of course, to help them understand the complexity and the context of it. But I just kind of did a quick summary. You're right.
No, and I understand that. And this is it's a quick demo. I get that. Sure. What I'm saying is that I think that, even at a very at a micro level, people don't know what their problems are. I mean, I'll give you a simple example. Let's just take it out in a different context for a minute. And I say, I used to be a therapist years ago, and I say, okay, so Mr. and Mrs. Smith, what's the problem? He had an affair. Is that the problem? Yes, he broke my trust. It's not the problem. That is a symptom of the problem. What's the problem, Mr. and Mrs. Smith? He's a douchebag. Maybe, but that's not the problem, Mrs. Smith. What's the problem? I don't know. Well, let's examine that. And then we start drilling down and we discover, well, you never made him feel special. I get that that's not entirely your job. but this person made him feel like he was the king, and as a result, or he was not attentive to you, or there's things that are going on under the surface that so often people who are confronting a problem are looking at symptom. They don't return to a first principle way of looking at problems. And I think that if we're going to do a great job, we have got to move people to a first principle of the problem. You can't solve the problem of petroleum fuel by putting electric cars on the road. It looks like a solution to the problem. It's not, because they have to plug into a grid, and a lot of the grid is run on fossil fuels. It's a problem. You're just creating a new problem, and you're removing a symptom. And I think that oftentimes as leaders, even as sales leaders, we're confronting really symptoms and not problems. And I love that you are committed to building enough trust for people to go there. But I also think, and this is what I want to come back to, I also think that people don't necessarily want to admit the real problem.
They will admit it to somebody they trust. They will protect themselves and give you only a tidbit of it if they sense that you have your own agenda.
Very good. Very good. Ari, this has been fabulous, my friend. I really want to thank you. I appreciate you taking the time. I didn't get to go enough into Toby as much as I would have liked, but I am glad that you got to mention that you wrote a book about him and about his massive impact on you as a leader, and even in the direction of how you are teaching and selling and all the things that you're doing. I would love for you to share with our audience where they can find out more about you and all the things that you do and all your wonderful resources. But before we do that, I always want my guests to share something that is incredibly practical, that preferably our audience can go away and do right now to really integrate what you're saying, because information is worth the hole in the donut. Transformation comes from the application of what you're saying.
Use the languaging I gave you. Would you be open? Forget follow up, use feedback. On a first call with someone, say, where do you think we should go from here? And I'll give you one more.
Yep.
If you're making outbound calls with somebody and you're getting slammed at hello, say this instead. Introduce yourself. My name is Ari. And here's what you say. You say, I'm hoping you can help me out for a moment. Use that as an entry point into a new call with someone, and deliver it that way with space, pause, and calmness, and watch what they say. I promise that they're going to say to you, how can I help you? And that's the first part of a two-way conversation to build trust with somebody. Now, it goes on from there, but that one opening phrase was a game changer.
So I really want to reiterate this because I think it would be easy to miss. One of the key pieces in everything that you've delivered is that it is delivered at a consistently easy pace. There is no pressure in the pace. There's no call to action in the pace. There's no feeling of this is a sales piece.
There's no next step.
Thank you. That's the best way to say it. There's no next step. This is very much, do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? 3 very different ways of delivering it. Same words. And I do love you.
If you want, I'll just quickly tell you that 20 years from now, people always ask me if I had the same conference call.
Yes.
I knew what I knew now. What would I have done, 20 years ago?
Yeah. Tell us.
And the answer to that question is that I never would have had the phone call, because I would have known on that first call with him up front before the conference call the truth about where they were at. You see, back then my only goal was to move things forward, but now I know up front I'm going to make sure there's a fit first and that we're a match before I move forward at all.
Yeah, really, they sold you. If you hadn't have listened to that they would have sold you. You would have jumped in next time, added more value, and kept doing that cycle. That is brilliant.
I was seduced like everybody else is being seduced right now.
Yeah, and that is a key thing, right? We get seduced by the sale. We think we're seducing, but we're actually getting seduced. I love that. That is a key point to finish on. Exactly. Ari, please tell our viewers and our listeners where they can find out more about you and all your wonderful resources. I am entirely grateful.
Sure. Just go to www.unlockthegame.com. And the best place to start with us is called Mastering the Mindset. There's a program there around that. There's a free test drive. Reach out to me if you want for a consultation. But as long as you're open-minded, challenging your own construct and your own framework from the past, you'll be successful. But you got to be open first for that concept. So unlockthegame.com.
Unlockthegame.com. You can also find Ari on Twitter. And, of course, you can find his book, Unlock the Game. Is it Unlock the Game of Sales?
Unlock the Sales Game.
Unlock the Sales Game. Sorry, yeah. Unlock the Sales Game. You can find that, of course, on Amazon and wherever you get books. Ari, this has been a pleasure and honor, sir. Thank you so much. I had so much fun. I hope you'll stay with us to the end. And for you, dear listener, remember you can hang out with other conscious leaders and chat about this episode or any past episodes by going to our Facebook or LinkedIn groups. Just look for the Leadership and Loyalty Podcast. The truth of the matter is, it doesn't matter how successful you are. If your employees and your customers don't understand what gives your company meaning, you're only working at a fraction of your capability. To find out how you can hire me, Dov Baron, as a speaker or leadership strategist for yourself or for your organization, simply go to dovbaron.com. Because unified meaning, or as we call it, finding a dragonfire, is the one single monolithic difference between mediocrity and greatness in all individuals and companies. I want to thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Till next time, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about whether you are following up or asking for feedback, whether you're pushing your agenda forward or whether you are creating trust. I'm Dov Baron. I'm here to assist you tapping into your dragonfire to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.